Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are looking at let me move this up, the Dreadnought. Um, the Dreadnought is one of those ships we actually get from the expanded universe. Um, it actually comes from the Heir to the Empire trilogy. So this is a very iconic trilogy for a lot of people. We start getting where we start getting Mara Jade, which then becomes Mara Jade Skywalker, as well as a lot of the other things that build up in the Star Wars universe outside of everything you would have seen on canon. So, for a lot of people, I believe that the Heir to the Empire is very much canon for a lot of those that had read it or picked it up on audio or whatever else. Um, I know I myself, I didn't pick it up until well later, but I know because it was one of those things when I was looking for extra content and all that stuff for doing Star Wars. I'd always tried to find any books that I could that had extra ships because way back when I was collecting it, we didn't have the internet like we do today. So just trying to find this stuff, I would actively try and find anything and everything I could that had books. So the sources that you can find this is the Imperial Source Book, the Jedi Academy source book, of course, the Thrawn Trilogy source book, which is what I have right in front of me that you can't see on screen, Starships of the Galaxies, an essential guide to vehicles and vessels. So, reading from The Heir to the Empire. All right, so prior to the Imperial Star Destroyer, the largest star cruiser in action was the dreaded Imperial Dreadnought. Dreadnoughts are among the oldest ships seen regular action as they were introduced before the Clone Wars. Although superior for the time that it was introduced, the ships were slow, poorly shielded, and not adequately armed for today's standards. However, they more than fill the New Republic's need for combat ships, even if they aren't the most sophisticated craft available. The original ships relied heavily on crewmen with little thought given to droid or complement assist and computer assistance. A fully equipped dreadnought required 16,000 crew members. As the ships have been refitted by the New Republic into assault frigates, they have been significantly automated. That about only 5,000 crew members are needed. Um, with these, tough times, the Republic commanders have learned to get by on much smaller skeleton crews. Okay, it's interesting reading this because if I remember correctly, and I know it's been a little bit since I was listening to it, um, one of the biggest things about the Dreadnought was everyone was kind of looking for them. Now, the reason why I say that everyone was looking for them is there was like a fleet of about 250 or 250 dreadnoughts that were they were lost originally. Now, um, in the original experiment, this is where like Star Trek and Star Wars really kind of separates because Timothy Zahn had written this in here. The reason why you don't have too many ships that have what they termed as slave computers that it would work a little bit more independently, or you could have another ship help kind of guide it to somewhere else with a very minimal crew. Um, so with the dreadnought, and I'm going to pan this down so you can see the beauty of the ship. So with the dreadnoughts, they had a what they were terming as a slave computer, so you could have one ship help guide all 250. But the problem was the navigation computer had gone wonky, and they just hyperdrived out to somewhere and nobody knew where they were. Now there was a couple pirates that had ideas. There was a couple found here and there, uh, and then throughout the trilogy, you actually find that It became a race for the empire, the remnants of the empire, namely Thrawn, who was coming out from the Outer Rim territories, and he was trying to find these as well as the New Republic. Um, Everyone's trying to get in there, and of course, pirates were trying to get as much as they could. Um, and the New Republic was actually doing some deals with some of the pirate forces trying to find these. So it became a great race of who was going to get this big fleet. And inadvertently, the Empire did actually get a good number of them. But they did not want to keep the computers that were in there. So the 5,000 was really the crew that was needed when it was all slave computered. So that way the computer was running the vast majority of the ship. Um, these were very big. I mean, they're what 600 meters long. So as we're looking at this, this is a heavy cruiser. It's 600 meters long. So really about the same size as a Star Destroyer. Or what we think of as the Star Destroyer, the Imperial class Star Destroyer. Um, because at the time that's all we really knew was the Imperial class Star Destroyer, and then we started seeing some earlier versions, and then uh, when we went back to having the Clone Wars, and we'll get some of those ships in here too uh, as we go on here. Uh, it, you, they started really making sure it was manned more than it was uh, computerized, where it could be taken over by a virus or whatever else. And then that was done on some of Lando Calrissian's ships, where he was running with a computerized crew, and a pirate had actually infiltrated another droid on him, and he was taken over the ship by just essentially having a droid that would reprogram other droids to do his bidding. So it was a constant threat for a lot of vessels here. Okay, so as we're looking at this, we do have the crew of 16,113. We have 97 gunners on this ship. So in other words, just to fire all the weapons, we need 97 people dedicated just to shooting the guns. Um, Initially, we have a skeleton of 9,000. Uh, We have the availability of 3,000 troops. So if you're doing planet falls or other military actions, you have the capability of holding 3,000 troops on board. Cargo capacity, we have 9,000 metric tons for cargo. We have consumables for up to 2 years. And of course, this is not going to be for sale. This was built at before the Clone Wars, and it was lost. And then they were in that race during the Thrawn trilogy. All right, hyperdrive at the time, 2x was pretty good, so that's what they had. They had a backup hyperdrive of times 18. And of course, they did have nav computers, but they were running with skeleton crews, and everybody kind of had issues. It was kind of horrific when they did see into these ships. There was a lot of mutinies and all that stuff. Uh, Maneuverability, like it said in the writing here, maneuverability was not the greatest, so it only had a 1D for maneuverability, and we had a space of fourth. So these are slow lumbering vessels for the time. Well, I mean, for, you know, after the Battle of Yavin and all that, but they were these huge vessels. I mean, it's when they were created, it's like looking at an aircraft carrier. You know that there's going to be lots of fighters coming out of there and everything else. Hull, these things are very resilient. With a 5D plus 2, they were very strong for a hull. Shield wise, 2D plus 1, so it's just a little bit above average. Sensor packets here, we have our passive scanners can go out about 3 kilometers. Our scan is about 5 kilometers. Our search is about 10 kilometers, and our focus is about 400 meters. So we have on this little bad boy, so we have 10 turbo laser cannons. So we have 5 on the left and 5 on the right. So again, just like in the old navies, they were really meant for broadsiding. So they do have a fire control of 3D, which is very respectable. Damage is only 2D, so it's not really the greatest. We have 20 quad turbo laser cannons. So we have 6 in the front, 7 on the left, 7 on the right, and then these need a crew of 3. The turbo laser cannons, we needed one to shoot and another 2 to reload. So that's something that we kind of saw in like the Clone Wars, especially in Episode 3 when they're shooting and you see all these shells kind of coming out. Um, that kind of idea here. So our quad laser cannons have a fire control of 2D, so that's pretty average, pretty standard, and a damage of 40. So that's again a kind of more or less standard for a lot of the ships when you really look at them. All right, so then we have 10 turbo laser batteries. Um, so we have 5 in the front and 5 in the back. And they have a fire control of 1D, so not really the best, and a damage of 7D, so these are the big honking cannons that you're hoping to really avoid. Um, so if you're being chased by one of these, you're looking at a lot of hurt being dished out towards you. Hopefully you can kind of sneak away from them. And it does carry one squadron of starfighters. So I believe a squadron would be 48 starfighters. Now, maybe I'm a little wrong on this. I do believe that's roughly about where it is. Later on, when we get into the actual, like the Imperial class and all those, the regular Star Destroyers, they start carrying. Some of them are more than one squadron. I think like 1.5 or 2 squadrons or whatever, or one squadron of fighters plus another half squadron of other mixed support vessels. So, um, with these, with the intent that you're going to have a couple of these coming out, you're going to have a lot of starfighters coming out. Um, and for the time, I'm trying to think what it have been. I'm trying to think what fighters they probably would have had for being prior to the Clone Wars. They could have been Z95s. I don't remember what they said that they had on there. And I know it's been a while since I've gone through the books. Actually, seeing I have the Thrawn trilogy. I'm trying to think if I can see here what fighters we were probably looking at. Um, well, Starships is all the way to the back. As I'm flipping through here, um, honestly, I can't really remember if they even had what kind of starfighters were in there. Um, and I'm not really seeing anything as far as that goes. So, um, so that tells me that they really didn't mention, or maybe the starfighter complement was stripped out from there. Um, so we never really did hear exactly what kind of starfighters I think were actually in there, and I don't really remember them saying. I just remember them, really going on about the ships, and these were really nicely done ships too. At the time, they had some very high end leather and all that stuff. So, but with that, here we are. We have our Dreadnaught, a beautiful ship for the time. So, I hope everyone's enjoying the series. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in the next.